The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble. Ambassador Lee Miho walked forward, his black boots clicking against the polished floor. Behind him, 3 other humans followed: Captain Park Jaiwon, Dr. Kim Hanna, and Engineer Choi Dohan. They looked tiny in the enormous room filled with alien beings from across the galaxy. High above them, thousands of creatures watched from floating platforms. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. A few resembled giant insects with multiple eyes. All of them stared down at the 4 humans with cold expressions. At the center of the chamber sat the Council of Judges, 12 ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Their leader was a massive serpent-like creature called High Judgevel. Its scales shimmered purple and gold as it raised its enormous head. "Humans of Earth," Vel's voice boomed through chamber. "You stand accused of crimes against galactic order. How do you answer?" Miho stepped forward. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. "We reject these false charges, High Judge. Humanity has done nothing but help this galaxy." A wave of angry sounds filled the chamber. Hissing, clicking, and strange musical tones that meant displeasure in dozens of alien languages. High Judge Vel raised one clawed hand, and the noise stopped immediately. "You spread across star systems without permission. Accuse Judge Crone, a being made of living metal. You terraform planets that were meant to stay empty. You ignore our laws." Dr. Kim Hanna wanted to speak up. She thought about all the diseases they had cured, all the lives they had saved. But Miho had told them to let him do the talking. "We terraform dead worlds," Miho replied calmly. "Worlds with no life, no owners. We brought gardens to empty rocks floating in space. How is that a crime?" "Because it shows your true nature," screeched Jazara, a bird-like creature with 4 wings. "You expand without control. You breed too quickly. You ask too many questions. You make friends with primitive species that should know their place." Captain Jaiwon clenched her fists. She remembered the Keth warriors who had fought beside human soldiers. She remembered the gentle root people who had shared their farming knowledge. The council called them primitive, but they had become humanity's closest allies. Judge Knox, a shadow being that looked like living darkness, floated forward. "Worst of all, you inspire others to rebel." The Keth now questioned military traditions that are millions of years old. The root refused to stay in their assigned sectors. The gear machines demand rights like living beings. This chaos follows wherever humans go. "Maybe," said Miho, his voice growing stronger. "The problem is not that we inspire change. Maybe the problem is that your old ways needed changing." The chamber erupted in outrage. Alien voices rose in a chorus of anger and shock. No one had ever spoken to council like this before. High Judge Vel's eyes glowed with fury. "Silence!" Vel's roar shook the walls. "This proves our point exactly. Humans cannot accept authority. They question everything. They poison the minds of lesser species with dangerous ideas about equality and freedom." Engineer Choi Dohan looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some showed hatred, others fear, but a few seemed sad. He realized that not everyone agreed with the judges, but they were all too afraid to speak up. "For 3 million years," continued Judge Vel, "this galaxy has known peace under our rule. Every species knows their role. Every world serves its purpose. But humans bring chaos wherever they go. They teach others to want more than they deserve." Miho straightened his shoulders. "If peace means never changing, never growing, never asking why things are the way they are, then maybe peace is not worth having." "Enough!" Judge Vel's massive tail slammed against the floor, creating a sound like thunder. "The council will now vote. All in favor of permanent exile for the human species." One by one, thousands of lights appeared in the darkness above them. Red lights that meant yes. They voted for exile. So many red lights that they looked like angry stars filling the night sky. Only a few blue lights appeared. Votes against exile. The Keth delegation's war chief stood and roared his support for humanity. A group of root beings sang a sad song of disagreement. A few individual aliens from various species quietly voted blue. but they were overwhelmed by the sea of red. "The vote is complete," announced Judge Vell with satisfaction. "By the power of the Galactic Council, humanity is banished to the Outer Rim. You have 60 standard days to gather your people and leave known space forever. May the cold emptiness teach you what we cannot." As the chamber began to empty, Miho felt a hand on his shoulder. Captain Jaiwin looked at him with fierce determination in her eyes. "They think they're punishing us," she said quietly, "but maybe they're setting us free." Dr. Hannah nodded. "The Outer Rim has resources they've never bothered to explore. And we won't be alone. The Keth will come with us. So will the Root and the Gears." Engineer Dohan smiled grimly. "Let them keep their perfect, unchanging galaxy. We'll build something better in the darkness." As they walked out of the chamber for the last time, Miho felt something he hadn't expected. Not sadness or anger, but hope. The Council thought they were sending humanity to die in the empty void beyond the galaxy's edge. They had no idea what humans could accomplish when they had nothing left to lose. The first human ship to reach the Outer Rim almost didn't make it back. Captain Park Jaiwin watched her instruments go crazy as strange energy waves hit the hull. The stars here looked wrong, some too bright, others flickering like dying candles. Space itself seemed angry and twisted. "Hull breach on Deck 3, shouted Engineer Choi Doan over the alarms. "The radiation is eating through our shields like acid." Dr. Kim Hanna ran to Medical Bay, where crew members lay sick and shaking. The cosmic radiation here was unlike anything they had faced before. It made people weak, caused their hair to fall out, and made them throw up constantly. Her medicines barely helped at all. Back on the human colony ships waiting at the edge of known space, families watched the exploration reports with growing fear. Admiral Song Kyung read the data with a heavy heart. The Outer Rim was worse than their worst nightmares. "Maybe we should go back," whispered colonist Yoon Soyoung as she held her sick daughter. "Maybe we should beg the Council for mercy." Her husband Lim Boyoung shook his head firmly. "They made their choice. Now we make ours. We survive or we die trying." The first settlements were disasters. Crops died in the poisoned soil. Water recyclers broke down from the strange minerals. Power generators exploded when hit by energy storms that came from nowhere. Children cried from hunger, while parents wondered if they had doomed their families. But humans had one thing the Council never understood. They adapted. Dr. Hannah worked day and night, mixing human medicine with samples from the few plants that grew in this wasteland. Slowly, she created treatments that helped people fight the radiation sickness. Engineer Dohan studied the energy storms that destroyed their equipment. Instead of fighting them, he learned to use them. His new power collectors actually fed on the chaos, turning the Rim's deadly forces into electricity for the colonies. Young Commander Kim Tae-won led mining teams to the strangest asteroids anyone had ever seen. These rocks contained metals that glow with their own light and crystals that seemed to sing when touched. The materials were unlike anything in the inner galaxy. "Look at this," Tae-won called to his team, holding up a chunk of purple crystal. "It stores energy like a battery, but holds 10 times more power than our best cells." The breakthrough came when they found the others. The human scouts had detected strange signals coming from a dead solar system. When Captain Jaiwin led a small fleet to investigate, they found something amazing. The signals came from other exiles, species that had been thrown out of the galaxy long before humans even existed. They lived in hidden bases built inside hollow asteroids and dead planets. The first contact was with the Keth warriors. These proud fighters had been banished 300 years ago for questioning why they always had to follow orders without thinking. When they saw human ships, they prepared for battle. But Ambassador Lee Miho did something unexpected. Instead of running or fighting, he sent a simple message. "We are exiles too. Can we talk?" The meeting happened on a small moon covered in ice. War Chief Danica the Keth stood 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin like armor. He looked down at the small human diplomat with suspicion. "Why should we trust you, tiny creatures?" Danik growled. "The Council sent you to spy on us." Miho smiled sadly. "The Council threw us out just like they did to you. We're here because we have nowhere else to go." Slowly, carefully, The exiles began to share their stories. The root people had been banished for forming partnerships with other species instead of staying separate. Their leader, a gentle being called Song of Rivers, could make plants grow in the most impossible places. The Gears were artificial beings who had gained consciousness and demanded rights. The council called them dangerous machines and ordered them destroyed. They'd been hiding the rim for over 1,000 years, building secret factories in asteroid belts. Each group had skills the others needed. The Keth were incredible fighters and engineers. The Root understood biology and could grow food anywhere. The Gears could manufacture anything and never got tired or sick. And humans? Humans had something special. They could bring different groups together. In the inner galaxy, Miho explained to the gathered exile leaders, everyone stays separate. Each species keeps to themselves. But here, we need each other to survive. Dr. Hannah started working with Song of Rivers to create new medicines. Engineer Dohan learned gear manufacturing techniques to build better equipment. Captain Jaiwin trained with Keth warriors to defend the growing settlements. The changes came slowly. Human colonies that had been dying began to grow stronger. Keth weapons protected root farms. Gear factories produced tools that helped everyone. And human diplomats kept all the groups working together instead of fighting. Commander Taewon, who had grown up during the exile, could speak all their languages and understand all their ways. To him, this mixing of species seemed normal and natural. We're becoming something new, he told his father one day as they watched Keth children playing with human kids near a root garden tended by gear workers. Something the council never imagined. 5 years after the exile began, the Outer Rim was no longer just a place where unwanted species went to die. It was becoming home to something the galaxy had never seen before, a place where being different made you stronger, not weaker. But this was only the beginning. 7 years had passed since the Great Exile, and the Outer Rim looked completely different. Where once there had been empty darkness and deadly radiation, now glowing stations dotted the void like bright stars. Ships moved between them in steady streams, carrying trade goods and messages between the growing settlements. Commander Kim Taewon stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, watching a sight that would have amazed the Galactic Council. A Keth warrior worked beside a human engineer, both of them laughing at something a gear mechanic had said. In the background, root farmers sang their growing songs to help plants flourish in the ship's garden. But their peaceful life was about to be tested. The attack came without warning. Pirates using stolen council technology burst from hyperspace near the root farming colonies on the rim of the Vega system. These weren't ordinary criminals. They flew advanced warships with weapons that could crack planets. All root vessels, this is your only warning, came the pirate leader's harsh voice over the radio. Surrender your biotechnology and crystal farms, or we will burn your worlds. Song of Rivers, the gentle root leader, tried to negotiate. We are peaceful farmers. We have no weapons. Please, there are children here, Dash. The pirate's answer was a plasma beam that struck the main farming station. Hundreds of root families screamed as their home exploded in fire. The distress call reached Alliance headquarters within minutes. Admiral Park Jaiwin, now commander of all Rim forces, looked at the tactical display with cold anger. War Chief Danik of the Keth pounded his 4 fists on the table. Those cowards attack farmers and children. Danik roared, "Give me a fleet, and I will crush them." "Wait," said Ambassador Lee Miho, now older but still sharp. "These pirates have council weapons. That means someone in the inner galaxy is helping them. This isn't just a raid, it's a test." Prime Unit 7 of the Gears processed the data quickly. Its mechanical voice was calm but certain. Analysis confirms. Pirate technology is 37% more advanced than expected. Probability of council involvement, 89%. Dr. Oh Jaihai, who had taken over medical duties from the aging Kim Hannah, studied the enemy ship designs. They're testing our defenses, seeing how we fight, how we coordinate. Someone wants to know if the Alliance is really a threat. Commander Taewon looked around the war room at his diverse team. Then let's show them what we're really capable of. The Alliance response was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of sending one species ships in formation, they mixed everything together. Keth battleships carried root biofighters that could repair themselves during combat. Human carriers launched gear drones controlled by pilots from all 4 species. Each ship had mixed crews working as one unit. The pirates were expecting an easy victory. Root colonies had always been helpless before, but when the Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace, the enemy found themselves facing something completely new. Admiral Jywin didn't use traditional battle formations. Her ships moved like a living creature, flowing around the enemy in patterns that seemed random but were perfectly coordinated. When pirates tried to target the largest ships, smaller vessels appeared from impossible angles to strike their weak points. "What are they doing?" demanded the pirate captain as his forces were torn apart by tactics he couldn't understand. "Why don't they fight like normal military units?" The answer came when Commander Taiwan's strike force hit the pirate flagship. Instead of trying to destroy it, they used gear hacking technology to take control of its systems. In minutes, the enemy's own weapons turned against their fleet. But the real surprise came when the surviving pirates surrendered. Instead of executing them or sending them to prison, Ambassador Miho did something unexpected. "You came here expecting to find weak farmers and scattered outcasts," he told the captured pirates over the communication system. "Instead, you found species working together as equals. Now you have a choice." The choice was simple. The pirates could return to the inner galaxy and report what they had seen, or they could stay and join the Alliance. Many of them were outcasts themselves, criminals and rebels who had nowhere else to go. To everyone's surprise, most of them chose to stay. The victory at Vega changed everything. News of the battle spread quickly through both the Rim and the inner galaxy. Other exiled species began to seek out the Alliance, drawn by stories of a place where differences were celebrated instead of feared. The Dream Singers arrived first, beings who could speak mind to mind but had been banished for their psychic abilities. Then came the Void Swimmers, nomads who lived in the empty spaces between stars. Each new species brought unique skills and knowledge, but the Alliance's greatest achievement was still to come. In the gravity shadow of a neutron star, where space itself was twisted into impossible shapes, they began building something magnificent. Horizon Station rose from the cosmic chaos like a flower blooming in a storm. Part root bioarchitecture, part Keth engineering, part gear manufacturing, and part human creativity. It was a city in space that could house millions. The station used a neutron star's incredible gravity to generate limitless power while hiding from council sensors. "It's beautiful," whispered young Lee Soo-yoon, Dr. Ojai's daughter, as she watched the station grow from the observation deck. Around her, children from all the Alliance species played together, speaking a mix of languages and sharing toys that would have been impossible without cooperation between their peoples. Ambassador Miho stood beside her, his hair now completely gray, but his eyes bright with hope. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "We're not just surviving anymore. We're showing the galaxy what's possible when people work together instead of apart." In the distance, Alliance ships patrolled the growing borders of their territory. The Outer Rim was no longer a place of exile. It had become something new, a beacon of hope in the darkness. 23 years had passed since humanity's exile when the desperate message arrived at Horizon Station. The hologram flicker was static as it played in the Alliance Council chamber, showing scenes that made even hardened warriors gasp in horror. Entire star systems were gone. Where once thriving worlds had orbited their suns, now only empty space remained. The attacker was something from beyond the galaxy itself, a swarm of living ships that consumed everything in their path like hungry locusts. Admiral Kim Tae-won, now in command of the largest fleet in the Outer Rim, studied the tactical data with growing concern. The enemy ships looked like massive insects made of black metal and pulsing flesh. They moved in perfect coordination, surrounding their targets and devouring them completely. "The inner galaxy is in full retreat," reported Intelligence Chief Park Naeung, Jaiwin's daughter. "Council forces are falling back on all fronts. Their rigid battle formations are useless against an enemy that adapts this quickly." War Chief Danik's son, Korik, slammed his armored fist on the table. "Good. Let the Council face the same fear they made us live with. Let them beg for help like they made us beg for mercy." "But, Doctor," Ojai shook her head sadly. If these swarm creatures consume the entire inner galaxy, they won't stop there. Eventually, they'll find us too. The debate raged for hours. Some Alliance members wanted revenge against the council that cast them out. Others argued for helping their former oppressors. The Dream Singers shared visions of a galaxy consumed by darkness. The Void Swimmer spoke of sensing the swarm's hunger growing stronger each day. Finally, old Ambassador Lee Miho stood up. Though he was now over 80 years old, his voice still carried authority. "We help them," he said simply. "Not because they deserve it, but because it's right. But we help them as equals, not as beggars asking come home." The message sent to the Council was short and direct. The Rim Alliance offers assistance against the swarm threat. Our terms: full recognition as an independent power and equal partnership in any defense treaty. The Council's first response was outrage. How dare the exiled species make demands when the galaxy faced extinction? But as more worlds fell to the swarm, pride gave way to desperate need. When the Alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace above the besieged Council world of Septimus Prime, even veteran space officers stopped and stared. The ships were like nothing anyone had ever seen, organic curves mixed with crystalline armor and mechanical precision. They moved not in rigid formations, but like schools of fish, flowing around each other in perfect harmony. Admiral Taiwan's flagship, the New Dawn, took point as a combined fleet approached the battle zone. Around him worked a crew that would have been impossible 20 years ago. Humans, Keth root gears, and a dozen other species all working as one unit. The swarm had surrounded Septimus Prime with thousands of their biomechanical ships. Council defenders tried to fight back using traditional tactics, but their orderly battle lines were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that learned from every encounter. This is Alliance command to all Council forces. Taiwan broadcasts on all frequencies. We're taking tactical control. Follow our lead, and we might all survive this. The Council Admiral started to protest, but then watched in amazement as the Alliance ships moved into action. Instead of meeting the swarm head-on, they scattered into small groups that attacked from every direction at once. When swarm ships adapted to one tactic, the Alliance immediately switched to something completely different. Commander Lee Soo-yoon, now a veteran pilot herself, led a mixed squadron of fighters through the enemy formation. Her wingmen included a Keth warrior, a Dream Singer who could predict enemy movements, and a gear drone that never missed its target. "Remember," she called to her pilots, "we don't fight like them. We don't think like them. Use that." The battle turned when the Alliance revealed their secret weapon, technology born from the chaos of the Outer Rim itself. Ships that could phase in and out of normal space. Weapons that fired controlled black holes. Shields that turned the enemy's own energy attacks back on themselves. But the swarm was learning too. For every trick the Alliance used, the enemy found a counter. The battle might have been lost if not for the most human trait of all, the willingness to sacrifice everything for others. As swarm reinforcements poured into the system, Admiral Taiwan made a decision that shocked both sides. Instead of retreating to save his fleet, he ordered a desperate attack straight into the heart of the enemy formation. "All ships," this is Taiwan, "we're going to ram their command vessel. Set your reactors to overload on my signal." "Sir," called his communications officer, a young Keth warrior named Jenik. "That's suicide." Taiwan smiled grimly. "No, it's hope. Tell the Council that the Outer Rim remembers what it means to fight for something bigger than ourselves." The New Dawn and 7 other Alliance ships punched through the swarm's defenses like arrows fired from a massive bow. As they reached the enemy command vessel, a mountain-sized creature that coordinated the entire attack, Taiwan gave the final order. The explosion that followed could be seen from 3 star systems away. The swarm command ship and its escorts vanished in a ball of fire that briefly outshone the local sun. Without their central coordination, the remaining swarm ships began to retreat in confusion. As rescue ships pulled survivors from debris, they found Admiral Taiwan's escape pod floating in the void. Badly injured but alive, he looked up at the mixed crew of rescuers and smiled. "Did we win?" The answer came from the Council Admiral himself, speaking over the fleet communications with something that sounded like respect. "The day is ours, thanks to the Rim Alliance. The galaxy would never be the same. The war against the swarm lasted 3 more years, but it was never the same after the Battle of Septimus Prime. The Alliance tactics spread through the Council fleets like wildfire. Rigid formations gave way to fluid strategies. Ships from different species began working together for the first time in galactic history. Commander Lee Soo-yoon found herself training Council pilots who had once looked down on humanity as primitive troublemakers. Now they hung on her every word as she taught them how to fight as a team instead of following orders blindly. "Forget everything you learned in the academy," she told class of mixed-species pilots. "The enemy adapts to predictable patterns. You have to think, not just obey." A young Naga pilot raised a scaled hand. "But Commander, what if we make mistakes? What if individual thinking leads to chaos?" Soo-yoon smiled. "Then we learn from those mistakes and try something new. That's what makes us stronger than any enemy that only knows how to copy what it sees." The final battle came to Galactic Core, where the swarm had built a massive breeding facility inside an artificial black hole. Council strategists said it was impossible to attack. The gravitational forces would crush any ship that got too close. But the Alliance had learned to use impossible things as weapons. Admiral Kim Tae-won, recovered from his injuries but walking with a limp, stood on the bridge of his new flagship surrounded by officers from a dozen species. The plan they had developed would have been considered madness just 5 years earlier. "We're going to surf the gravity waves right into their stronghold," he explained to the combined fleet commanders. "Root bio ships will lead because they can reshape themselves under pressure. Keth battle cruisers will provide firepower. Gear drones will handle precision targeting. And human coordinators will keep everyone working together when the chaos gets too thick to think straight." The attack began with something that looked like collective suicide. Hundreds of ships dove straight toward the black hole, letting its incredible gravity pull them faster than any engine could drive them. At the last possible moment, they used their combined technologies to surf along the edge of oblivion itself. The swarm defenders, expecting a conventional assault, were caught completely off guard. Their biomechanical ships couldn't adapt fast enough to an attack that came from directions that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Oh Jae-hai, now in her 60s but still leading medical teams, coordinated rescue operations as the battle raged around the black hole's event horizon. She watched human medics working alongside root healers and gear repair units to save lives from species that had been enemies just years before. "Look at them," she said to her daughter Soo-yoon over the comm system, "working together like they've known each other all their lives." The swarm's defeat came not from superior firepower, but from something they couldn't understand or copy, improvisation born from trust. When Alliance forces found themselves trapped in the enemy's breeding facility, they didn't follow any manual or training program. Instead, they invented new solutions on the spot. A Keth warrior used his strength to throw a human engineer into an impossible position where she could rewire enemy systems. A dream singer shared visions with gear units to coordinate attacks through psychic links. Root farmers turned their plant-growing skills into biological weapons that consumed the swarm's living technology. When the breeding facility finally collapsed into its own black hole, taking the last of the swarm leadership with it, the remaining invaders lost all coordination. Without their hive mind to guide them, they scattered back toward the empty space between galaxies. The victory celebrations lasted for weeks, but the real change came in the months that followed. The old Galactic Council chambers on Zentera Prime were rebuilt to accommodate new members. Species that had been outcast for centuries returned as honored partners in a transformed government. Ambassador Lee Mi-ho, now ancient but still sharp, walked slowly to the speaker's podium in the Great Hall. Around him sat representatives from over 200 species, some old council members who had learned to embrace change, others from the Rim Alliance who had fought for the right to be different. 26 years ago, he began, his voice still carrying clearly through the vast chamber. This council declared humanity too dangerous to remain in civilized space. You said we asked too many questions, made too many changes, inspired too much hope in those you considered lesser beings. He paused and looked around at the mixed audience. Humans sat next to Keth warriors. Root singers shared benches with crystal choirs. Gear representatives networked directly with dream singer telepaths. Today, those same dangerous qualities saved the galaxy. The lesson isn't that you were wrong to fear change. The lesson is that change is the only thing that keeps us alive in a universe full of surprises. Young Captain Park Jinwoo, great-grandson of the original Admiral Jaiwan, watched in the military section as his grandfather's old enemies applauded the human ambassador. Some of these beings had voted for humanity's exile, but now they stood and cheered for the species that had become the galaxy's bridge builders. After the ceremony, Jinwoo found himself walking through the station gardens with officers from a dozen different species. They were planning joint training exercises, sharing technical knowledge, and arguing good-naturedly about whose ships were faster. "My grandmother always said this day would come," he told his kept friend Danixon of Korik. "She said humans weren't meant to rule the galaxy or be ruled by it. We were meant to help everyone else remember that being different isn't something to fear." Outside the great windows, ships from across the galaxy moved in the flowing formations that had become the Alliance's signature. No longer the rigid lines of the old order, but patterns that celebrated diversity while maintaining unity. The Outer Rim had indeed conquered the galaxy, not through force, but by showing everyone that strength came from embracing what made each species unique. The age of exile was over. The age of cooperation had begun.